Hey there, Shua here with another drawing tutorial. Today we're going to look at drawing the human face, and let's get started. I'm going to start with just a circle, and I'm going to carry a couple of lines down for the side of the face, and then also carry out a little bit of markings here for the chin. Now, this is just kind of my basic starting shape, and I can build off of this in a lot of different ways. What's important to note is your center line, of course, straight down the middle, and then also the halfway point from the top of the head. This would be the crown of the head to the chin. Okay, so I'm going to kind of get a light line right in there, and then somewhere around in there is the halfway point. Okay, very important. This halfway point this way is where your eyes will be, and we're talking about the center point of the eye, or the pupil, and more specifically as we start to draw some circles here, we're talking about the eye sockets actually in the skull. So that's kind of important to note. Now these two dots happen at about the midway point between here and here, roughly, give or take a little bit, and every person is a little bit different. From these 2 points you make an equilateral triangle. So if you could imagine a triangle happening here, and this is actually the center of the opening for the nose. So you could think about like a triangle or an opening in a skull for the nose, and that's kind of the center point of that area. So when you're talking about the human face, it's good to think about the structure happening underneath the surface. So it's good to think about where the skull is lining up, and that tends to help you with the rest of the process as well. From the center point here of the nose down to the chin, you get the halfway point between those, and that is the opening for the mouth. So if you think about this, that you're actually thinking about the teeth first, so this is where kind of the teeth will sort of come together, and that gives you a good starting point. If you drop a straight line down from the center point of the eye, you're going to get the corners of the mouth. Okay, and I've pulled these up just a little bit from the center because I'm going to put a smile on them, just a slight smile there. From the outside edges of the nose, those line up with the inside corner of the eye. So you can go ahead and draw some lines down there. So this is kind of where that little, where the eye starts to come in. Here and here. You can just draw basic football shapes if you want. Now I start with a circle around this just to help me think about this as a rounded object. So I'm not only drawing a circle, I'm thinking of it as a sphere or as a three-dimensional object, because the eye is a three-dimensional object, and the eyelids have to wrap around that three-dimensional object, which is what is going to make it the shape that it is. Sometimes if you just draw like the shape of a football, you're thinking about it as a two-dimensional shape, and just the process of thinking about that not as a two-dimensional shape, but as a kind of, for lack of a better term, a flap of skin wrapping around a sphere, which is the eyeball, sometimes that gives you just a little bit better understanding as you're doing your drawing. Now typically there is the width of one eyeball in the middle here between the two eyes, and maybe about half of an eyeball to the side of the head here. So we got that. Now if you carry this line over the halfway point from the crown to the chin, this is where the ear attaches to the head. Not the top of the ear, but where it actually attaches to the head. And then if you bring this line out from the center point of your nose, this is where the earlobe attaches, and not really the actual bottom of the earlobe, but where the ear actually attaches. So hopefully that helps you with those kind of relationships. And of course this is a spot-on direct forward view, and as the head turns you will have to adjust these measurements, but this starts to give you some of the basics. The eyebrows tend to rest right on the ridge of the eye socket, so right before the opening of the eye, the eyebrows tends to sit right there. So you'll notice that an eye socket tends to be a lot bigger. What's nice about this is that there's usually some shadow or shading going on around the eye where the light gets blocked a little bit from the eye socket, and so that circle that follows where the eyebrow rests is a nice kind of measuring, or a nice way to measure where it'll be. Now also you usually have eyebrows that come up off of that ridge a little bit, and you get, you know, kind of sort of that wrap around here where it starts to wrap around the plane of the face. Now up here you've got your forehead, and I can draw kind of a circle for that, and depending on the hair, some people have hair, you know, that comes down right under their eyebrows or into their bangs that come down over their eyes. Some people, like me, are almost bald, and so you can draw the hairline way up here. What's really important to notice is that this is the top of the head, the very crown of the head, and a lot of times we just draw kind of what we see as the face. So if someone has bangs, we think of the top of the head being the bottom of the bangs for some reason, and so the eyes tend to be way up higher on the head when we first start drawing things, and that's just something that you learn with a little bit of time and practice, a little bit of instruction. Things are not proportionally the way they necessarily register in your mind at first. But once you think about it and look at it and study people's faces, you'll see very quickly that those proportions are not just the face, but the proportions of the head from the crown to the chin are really what we're talking about. Alright, so those are just kind of the basic placements for the human face, and obviously as you study different people, you'll notice all the different nuances. Some people have pointy noses, some people have wide noses, some people have hooked noses. I mean, everybody's got a little bit different kind of feel to it, but those basic things, and if you can think about it more from the bone structure aspect of it, you get the placement right, and then a nose that's a hook nose, it may come all the way down here and almost look like it overhangs so much that it could be touching the top lip, and someone else might have a little bit more of a what we would describe as a piggish nose, where you can see more of the nostrils, and so everybody's a little bit different. So I try to think about it more based off the structure of the skull than I do actual surface, at least when I'm getting started. And then once you've got the basic placement there, you can start to really get into the details. So under the nose there will always be kind of a shadow because the nose blocks some of the light, and so typically you've got a shape that kind of mimics the shape of your nose falling right underneath, right down here. Same thing underneath the bottom lip. Also typically the top lip tends to be in shadow, so if you notice here, that helps. And as I'm doing this, the lines on the lips sort of radiate out a little bit, so if you kind of shade in that way, I think it just adds a little bit more to the feeling of the drawing, if you can remember to do that. And then also some of these details, like on the eyes, the eyelid also casts a little bit of a shadow right underneath. Right here, it's just a little bit darker, and then of course where the eyelid crease is up here, it's going to be a lot darker there. So just some of those little shading details really make a big difference. Understanding that they're there, incorporating them in, really begin to make your drawing take shape. And you can always change the jawline if you want a more heroic wider chin or a bigger chin, or all those little details. You can kind of get away with adjusting that a little bit later on in the process. Now typically the jaw would be a little bit higher up here. It would be sinking into the skull, so you're going to have some jaw muscles kind of right around in here, and that's sort of important to note, because even though the skin is hiding a lot of that stuff, if you understand where the anchor points are on the face, it just helps, again, for all of your lines to match up. If you look at your face and you're like, man, something just doesn't feel right about it, it's probably the underlying anatomy that is off more than what's going on the surface. I would say seek to find out what's going on underneath the surface to identify what's not right in your drawing. Alright, this has been another drawing tutorial. Thanks a lot for watching.